one of the benefits of getting older and being around so long is my mate George, way back in the day, was actually Dickie's head man when Dick first kicked off. And George was one of the first people he reamed, ripped off, screwed up, and fucked over. So, yeah, no, I know about Dick way back. Dick's always been a bit of a dick. Just ask anyone that worked for him. Fucking Dick. What else can we find in my magic book of scribbles? Yes. We were talking about this before, about the whole emphasis about sexual identity these days, and I seem to think I think everything's been it's been focused on the sexual identity, but it's not really about that. There's this whole who am I, the same question that mankind has had since we worship the sun. Why am I here? What's it all about? Is there more to life? Especially when you're living in a world where you're just becoming part of a machine, go and work until you can't work any longer, and, then you're no use to us, go and die. We've lost that whole touch with what the world's about. So, and instead of that questioning, that, they make you question your sexuality because it's simpler. So everything's about sex. It's like, who gives a fuck about sex? Like, seriously, like, was it really important 20 years ago when you were having a discussion with someone if they understood that who it was you preferred to sleep with? Did it matter to you? You know what I mean? If you're working with people, does it really matter what they did when they got home behind their closed doors? Did it, it's like if I want to fuck a horse, you must all accept my choice to fuck a horse before I'm going to be happy. It's like, I'm not just happy fucking a horse, you all have to accept my right to fuck a horse. Kind of, that's kind of what the mentality thing is. It's like, mate, who cares who you want to fuck? Or who you want to fuck you? Is that really what is important in our world? Because that's what seems to be the focus on. Sexual identity. It's like, I don't care who you want to fuck. Oh, you must call. Look, mate, I don't care. Oh, yeah, but No. You don't understand. I don't care. I don't care what your sexual identity. I don't care what your sexual identity is. It means nothing. If you're heterosexual, it means nothing. If you're not, it means nothing. Your sexual identity doesn't impact me, does it? See, this is what you see. It's not important, but it seems to have become this big thing that we're all fucking talking about. And it's because that's what they're getting you to talk about. Because there is this general loss of understanding about who we are. But it's not about who we want to fuck. It's about who we literally are. Who we are as a spiritual being. Who we are as an entity with this intelligence on this rock flying through space. Surrounded by a void of darkness. Where there doesn't seem to be any other rocks floating through space with life on them. So there is this real quest. This questioning. And if you go back to the old Coptic stuff, you go back to like the Nag Hammadi scrolls, to the Greek, to the early pre-Genesis aspects of the Bible and the Abrahamic religion, and you understand that there's an actual whole section there about how God is created and becomes aware, and then goes on to create in order to understand who he was, because God's born into a void all on his own, going, who the fuck am I? What am I doing here? That's Gnosis. That's the beginning of your Abrahamic religions. Okay? So there's this whole, the core behind creation is about understanding, discovery. Who am I? What am I about? And that's that thing that is within the core of all of us and has always been within the core of all of us. That seeking for understanding, that thirst to know. Only now it's been focused on knowing what it is that we want to fuck. Does it matter? No, it doesn't. I'll go back to the scribble thing here. They, them, the people realise that the loss of faith has cost them more than it first appeared. They are lost individually and as a whole. It's not one of these thoughts we think about. We bury it deep, really deep, and instead we wonder who's getting a rose this week on The Bachelorette. Our society is literally spinning on its own axis, going in a circle. Apathy does not make a stable foundation to build a future. That's all right. Society and those within it carry the burden of lack of vision. There is no true eye to the future, or to be more precise, any idea of a future, to what we are working towards, what we are building as a society. Having freed ourselves from all the burdens of belief in an all-powerful higher being, no longer shackled to faith in gods, goddesses, heavens or hell, we stand self-aware and living in a finite world sentenced to a finite life. Birth and death, with all the precious time between, our only real resource. Moments with which to fill hours that flow as the world spins upon its axis, and a new day with potential begins anew. No real way of knowing how soon or how long until the end of your funeral song. It's moment by moment. And we need to think about that. We need to think about what is it that we want to build. What is it that we wanted to create? What is it that our ancestors laid the foundation for us to build upon? What did they expect? You know, like the people standing on the shores of Australia 200 years ago, taking those first steps into this new land. What did they hope their great-great-grandchildren would be, you know, opening up their door to of morning? What kind of world were they hoping would be there in 100 and 200 years' time? Probably allowed where they weren't sent halfway across a globe for stealing a loaf of bread, right? And yet here we are again. Break a rule, get a fine, don't pay the fine, go to jail. Why? Because you can't afford a fine, you can't afford to pay. Pauper's jail, just like in Dickens. I used to cry about that as a child. I thought, my God, how could people have done that? They're doing it again. Corporations have crept into all of the public services. Look at this. You've seen that welfare card they're giving you to put, you know, people on the dole. They give them to put on a little plastic card for their benefits. Except they're charging $10,000 a year to provide that card. Do you know what the benefits are on average for a single person for a year? Just a little bit over $10,000. So they're actually doubling the cost of the unemployment benefit for that person, while impinging on their liberties and restricting what they can do. So instead of going, you know what, we've got almost double the amount of money we could be giving people, why not give them a little bit more? Make life a little bit easier. No. Let's give $10,000 for each of those unemployed people to one of our mates in a business that the political party has actually invested and set up, and siphon off even more money from the public coffers. Do you understand that? That they've doubled the cost of the unemployment benefit on those people. On you. They've doubled that cost. And they're pocketing 10 grand. Giving no benefit whatsoever for taking that $10,000, other than inflicting more harm and more control over someone that's already vulnerable. Where's the logic in that? Where could the honest to God person in the street think it's appropriate for us to give $10,000 to a company to oppress the vulnerable? That's what our governments are doing. We need to get rid of both Liberal and Labor, even like all of their sycophantic little parasites, the Greens and so forth. We don't need these little political parties. Okay? You can have interest parties, you can have, look, we've got to look after our environment. But the Greens have not become something that looks after the environment. The Greens have become pseudo-Labour. They've sold us out on so many different things. Okay? So they're not really green. It just looks good on the election paper and it gets extra votes for Labour from the back door. We need to get rid of these. We need to get representatives of the people. Okay? Not corporate entities. And like seriously, yeah, You go, oh, you won't achieve anything if you have all bloody independence. You go, you know what we won't achieve? We won't achieve detrimental things to Australians. We won't achieve asset stripping. We won't achieve destroying our country. What we will achieve, after a bit of time, is a bit of logic and a bit of common sense. Because everyone in that room, see, it's not about filling up the House of Representatives with an opposition and a government. It's about filling up the room, all people representing Australians, who all want the best for Australia and the Australians within it. Right? It's a difference. So a lot can be achieved. So we, like, oh, okay, we're going to put all the funding towards public schools. That's what everyone's there for. So it happens. None of this little fucking, wandering around. Boom, it's done. Because it's not opposition and government. It's about representatives of Australians working together for Australia. And we have goals. We want the health system, the education system, public services back into Australians' hands. Right? There's our first ones, because that is going to give us lower taxes. That is going to give us better services at a lower cost. We're going to end prohibition, because that is going to stimulate so many new industries in this country, from the cannabis side to the hemp side, the seed side, the textile side, the renewable fuel side. We've got the land to do this. We've got an international market for the seeds. There's no such thing as a glut. Australia has a potential opportunity in front of it, and all it's going to take is a $5 million investment and 13 people from every electorate around this country. And we can take this country to a new place, to a better place. And then you can make me Governor General, because I love that mansion on the water. Guaranteed I'll have the best parties every month. I'll be the very model of a modern Major General. Gilbert and Sullivan. Ew. My God. Probably even calls my fine lady Pygmalion. You know what? I'm beginning to think this man might be educated. That could be dangerous. What are we going to do? Can you imagine that question's been asked behind closed doors quite a bit? Ego alert! I hope everyone's having a great night. I love going through my stuff. So actually so many projects, so many notes. Okay, did I do a better picture than that? Not really. And like, seriously, I'm just like the mad scribbler. Trying to, like, this is backwards. It's to try and, you can see that. So it's in reverse. So if you hold your phone into a mirror and look at the reflection, that'll make sense. And it won't. But I'll go through it with you. What it basically is that I wanted to try and create a way of making the system work. So, first of all, I read the info around the biofuel and looked at what was the best, when it comes to renewables and like this waste. I knew about this waste on the hemp seed fields, and I thought, what can I do with that? So I looked to what was out there as far as information about biofuel, and I like a lot of information. And then I came across some really, really cool information. Like, what the fuck? It's like deep, detailed documentations, costings, and things like that. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot. And then I realized that the reason that there was so much information around the use of the methanol, ethanol for energy production and so forth was because it can be extracted and produced from LPG. It's a cleaner version of it. But of course, when they're producing it, the stuff that they take out is toxic gas. So they can't really produce it. It doesn't really have that renewable clean energy thing because the production of it from the LPG is a dirty process, in a sense. But what it is the fact that there then was incentive to fully understand biofuel and what it can be used for. So I'm like, oh, great. So I could start getting into this information. Then I find out about these Israelis were doing some stuff nearly 20 years ago, and then 15 years ago they converted over these gas turbines and started running them on this. I'm like, well, it's cool. And I get deeper and deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole, and I realise that all of the actual figures, they stand up. The energy production, the costs and so forth, it's all within scope, and we're not talking about subsidised like every other renewable thing. We're actually talking about cost-effective energy production. So then I started, oh, why haven't they gone ahead? And more paperwork, and then an international auditor's report set for Australia for using energy, right, renewable fuel, blah, 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 because it was something they were trying to sell off, this LPG, because we've got all that LPG off the coast, right? So we can convert it to methanol and run it, and it becomes a clean renewable. It's not really, but they've done the paperwork for me. And then there's this other thing there, and they go, oh, made from organics. And it concluded that it's all feasible and it's all practical if you can supply the feedstock. So that's what it always comes down to, securing the feedstock, because it's always come down to the food versus fuel debate. Okay, using the resources, land, water and so forth, for producing a crop for fuel when you could produce it for food. Once again, this plan uses the waste from a food crop. So the food market gets its crop, and then the waste is used for the energy production. So there's a feedstock. How do I secure it at the amount? So then I started looking at how much it would take, the facts, the figures for extractions and so forth, and how much it needs, and viability, and then the building of the actual systems. And then you find out that you can actually get plants designed and built here. They've been doing them overseas. They've got like this. This is not reinventing the wheel. This is basically just redesigning how the wheels are put together. New shaped car in a sense. So the technology's there to actually turn this crap into a fuel, into electricity, all in one hit. That's great. And then I started looking at, okay, so this feedstock, how do we secure it? You go, okay, so this is where the priority resource development initiative comes into play, is that the actual waste from the hemp seed industry becomes declared under the priority resource development initiative. So that's where it all has to go. And instead of paying the farmers for it in cash, they're actually paid for it in electricity credits, because farms use a lot of electricity. Now, the energy credits can be used for electricity or for fuel for their tractors and harvesting equipment and so forth. Okay, costs that they're going to have every year. So all of a sudden, they're taking the waste and they're getting an income from it and offsetting their costs. Not only that, they're actually getting more back in return. Because when you're actually starting to look at the renewables, then we go and we look at, oh look, there's this huge big pot of money over here, $200 billion for developing renewable fuel industries. Okay, so we need some of that money, so we take $200 million over the first 2 years, and then another $300 million over the next 3 to set up the plants and so forth. And over that 5-year time, we're producing, after the first stage, which is the 200 million, it's Victoria, the canola industry, 70% of Victoria's needs. Over the 5 years, we're actually producing enough renewable energy to offset all of Australia's emissions targets without subsidising it, having renewable electricity at a lower cost. And it all works because every megawatt of a renewable electricity that is created, the government issues a large-scale generation certificate, which has a market value at present of about $85, sold in lots of 1,000 or 5,000. I can't remember the minimum amount. So it's becoming this new energy trading thing. Now, each aspect of this renewable fuel plan equates to that. So there's one of those issued for the farmer, there's one issued for the actual processing of it, and then there's other ones that come into play when you're making the biofuel, which is also quarantined under the Priority Resource Development Initiative, which quarantines it from the fluctuations of the international fuel market price. Because this is not meant for the international fuel market, is it designated purely and specifically for energy production in Australia. So the market value of those large-scale energy certificates, which are an added value to the creation, the sale and production of electricity, which already has its own little income, obviously, sell and product. That extra money, that large-scale generation certificate, is what offsets the cost for the feedstock. So it becomes this self-financing. So the cost neutralizes the feedstock going into the system. It all cycles through. We're talking about renewable fuel through electricity stations, delivered to households at a lower cost than what power's costing you right now, and it's 100% renewable, and it would be owned by Australians, and it would be an agricultural-based energy sector, okay? Clean energy, renewable energy, owned domestically, energy security. And when you've got energy security, you've got a basis for industry. And because of all these wonderful new industries that can be birthed from the cannabis plant, it all grows from there. Once you're actually getting these production plants for turning the waste into the fuel out into the country areas, the overflow electricity created from those things allow us to put in value-added facilities for the farmers, seed productions and so forth. So the actual stimulus money coming in allow these farmers to expand their grow operations, to actually build up. They get loans, interest-free loans, which they're not even paying back, because the payments are coming out of their waste, which are paid into large-scale electricity certificates, which the government want to buy anyway. You know, so we get all this stimulus into the hemp seed industry. We get a renewable fuel industry growing, and that's all possible. That's all financially and mathematically and viably possible, because all of the maths, all the figures have been looked at. And it's not just me. It's what like as I said, not reinventing the wheel. I went looking for all of the wheels, okay, and then I just redesigned the car. The maths were already there. International accountancy companies done on behalf of the government and so forth. See, all of these things have been looked at. They've just never been looked at with the hemp plant as the byproduct for the feedstock. And then when you're looking at the methanol, then you're starting to look at all of the advanced fuels that can be made from that biomethanol, ethanol, right? Because that's a feedstock for advanced fuels, which is all your polymers, all your plastics. So then you're starting to look at biodegradable plastics, things that, you know, we really need. No more single-use bags. Why not have bags that'll actually rot away? iPhone cases, you know? There's so many industries that we can get into using that plant. Viable, profit-making industries. See, not socialism. We just need the basics taken care of so that we do actually have a society of people that are not starving to death or sleeping on the street. I don't think that's needed. The only reason that the government want people sleeping on the street is so that those that are hanging on to their houses feel good about their lives. And they shouldn't. Because their lives are shit. Because the government's making it shit. But we are the only ones that can make it better. The people involved in the situation have to get involved in the situation to rectify the situation. Anyway, it's been a while I've been on. I think I might take a break. I might be back. Who knows? I come, I go. It's a long one. I want to thank you for tuning in this evening. It's been awesome as usual. Call me Ancient, call me Jay. Just don't call me late for dinner, because the munchies is real, and it's a really important part of that whole medical process. If you have any questions about this evening's broadcast, feel free to reach out to me on the Ancient J page, the Green Cross page, or anywhere really. You know, reach out and touch me, just not inappropriately, because that's wrong. And yeah, look, have a think about what I said, and have a think about what you have got as an idea about the future Australia that we want to have. Let's not just put it down to me, because it's not just about me. It's about all of us. It's all of us participating, engaging, and not being afraid to realise that we have to do this. This is what's important. Changing the world. Not filling up a bank account. Making the world the place it's supposed to be. You and me, we can do that. All of us together. It's within our grasp. Seriously, $5 million is nothing. How many rich people you know? Put the call outs, put the challenge. $5 million will change the country. Yeah? And I'm not even going to run for election. As I said, I want the Governor General's powers. I'll run around and I will talk to every single person in the town until I find 13 of them in that electorate to stand up, and then we pay for their fees on the election. You know, every single town. I'll spend, look, $5 million on the table, mate. I will have 13 candidates in every electorate in this country before the next election. Why not? Imagine the win. For everyone. Anyway, I'm going to go. Call me Ancient, call me Jay. Just don't call me late for dinner. Thanks for coming.